Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a topic that is going to completely flip how you look at success. Right off the bat, I want to call out a really dangerous lie, a myth that almost everyone believes about money and wealth. It's this idea that millionaires, they're just lucky, that they were born in the rich families, handed golden opportunities on a silver platter, and blessed with these VIP connections the average person could never even dream of having. But what if I told you that many of the world's most successful people started with absolutely nothing? I'm talking no inheritance, zero shortcuts. Just struggle, failure, massive sacrifice, and a mindset that flat out refused to stay broke forever. Because here's the secret. Wealth isn't just built in bank accounts. It is built in the mind first.
Okay, let's dive into this. We are so heavily conditioned to buy into this myth of luck and rich parents, right? We use it as an excuse. But the stark reality is what we are really focusing on today. We're going to look at the powerful stories of individuals who lived that reality, the struggle, the late nights, the sacrifice, and above all, the mindset. Once you understand exactly how these individuals thought differently, you might never look at money, or honestly your own potential, the exact same way again.
Our first story begins with a guy who experienced true, absolute rock bottom. Before he became one of the most renowned and successful motivational speakers on the entire planet, Les Brown was broke. He was struggling just to survive, day by day, literally sleeping in his car. Growing up in extreme poverty, he was tragically labeled educably mentally retarded in school. Can you imagine the toll that takes? He spent years doubting himself, and almost everyone around him expected him to fail. In fact, he was actually working as a city sanitation worker way before he ever got near a microphone. He was rejected over and over and over again. He had absolutely no money, but he had something infinitely more valuable: pure, unadulterated belief. He focused on possibility. He started improving his communication skills, reading, learning everything he could, just scraping together any tiny opportunity he could find, long before he ever got his big break in radio.
And this brilliantly illustrates our first massive shift in thinking. The poor mindset waits around saying, I'll get ready when the opportunity finally shows up. But the rich mindset, it prepares relentlessly before the opportunity ever even knocks. It wasn't just blind luck that transformed Les Brown's life. It was his intense preparation finally colliding with an opportunity. While he was completely broke, he was preparing like a millionaire long before he ever actually became one.
Now, let's talk about a man who was once buried under a mountain of debt. Before becoming one of the wealthiest entrepreneurs alive, Damon John started his business with next to nothing. Growing up in a modest household in Queens, New York, he didn't have investors, he had zero wealthy connections. He literally started by sewing hats by hand and selling them out on the street. At his lowest point, he was grinding away full-time at a Red Lobster just to pay the basic bills, all while trying to grow his clothing brand, FUBU, out of his mom's house. He even mortgaged the family home just to keep this crazy dream alive. Really think about that immense level of risk and pure, terrifying discomfort. Most folks, they quit when things get that uncomfortable, but millionaires push right through it. Damon John later admitted something fascinating about that struggle. His utter lack of money actually forced him to become creative. The poor mindset says, well, I can't start because I don't have enough capital. But the rich mindset asks, how can I make this work with exactly what I have right now? His story is living proof that some of the greatest businesses in human history were born from limitation, not abundance.
Let's pivot for a second to a story that will completely change how you view failure. Imagine putting yourself out there, giving it your all, only to be fired from your very first television job and explicitly told to your face that you weren't fit for TV. That is exactly what happened to Oprah Winfrey. Before becoming a billionaire and an absolute global media titan, she faced devastating rejection. She grew up in deep poverty, suffered immense personal hardships, and then had her professional dreams publicly crushed. Imagine the sting of that rejection.
So, the crucial point is how you process that kind of devastation. Most people let rejection define them, right? They take failure as literal proof that they should just pack it up and stop. But successful people, they let rejection refine them. To a millionaire, failure is just feedback. It's data. Every setback on that road becomes a vital lesson. Every mistake is just added experience. Every obstacle is literally just training for the main event. That single mindset shift separates the people who stay stuck from the people who eventually break through. But perhaps one of the most shocking and truly visceral stories of wealth building is Chris Gardner's. You might actually know his story from the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, but the reality of his situation is almost hard to comprehend. There was a period when Chris Gardner was entirely homeless. He was sleeping on the cold floor of public subway bathrooms with his young son while desperately trying to build a better future.
He actually had to carry his meager belongings in a plastic trash bag while wearing his one single professional suit to work. Imagine the crushing emotional pressure of that. No stable income, no home, zero certainty about tomorrow. Most people would have completely shattered mentally under that weight.
But here's the thing. Gardner kept showing up. Every single day. He studied harder, worked harder, and stayed intensely disciplined. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing their present painful situation is permanent. But the wealthy thinker knows that pain is temporary. Gardner absolutely refused to let his temporary pain define his permanent future. He knew his current financial condition was not his final destination, and because he kept moving forward, he eventually became a highly successful stockbroker and a millionaire entrepreneur. Now, what's really interesting about this framework is that it reveals the actual daily mechanics of wealth. Most millionaires don't get rich from one giant, lucky breakthrough. No, they become wealthy through small decisions, repeated consistently for years. Just look at these daily choices. Reading instead of scrolling, investing instead of spending, learning instead of complaining, building instead of blaming. Wealth isn't an accident, it is a series of tiny, deliberate choices.
People love to talk about compound interest when it comes to money in a bank account, right? But guess what? Your mindset compounds too. Negative thinking compounds over time into fear, excuses, procrastination, and ultimately a lifetime of missed opportunities. Positive thinking compounds into confidence, action, discipline, and growth. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are unknowingly building either wealth or poverty through your daily habits. And the scary part is, most people don't even realize which one they've built until years later.
All right, we have to address a somewhat uncomfortable truth today. Many people secretly want the millionaire lifestyle, but they absolutely do not want to develop the millionaire mindset. They want all the luxury without any of the discipline, the results without the sacrifice. It's what we call the success iceberg. The world only applauds the 10% visible success at the very top. What they don't see, and frankly what they don't want to see, is the massive amount of invisible effort buried beneath the surface. The sleepless nights, the crippling doubt, the terrifying risk, the delayed gratification. And you know, maybe that's exactly why so many people quit too early. They look at the very tip of someone else's iceberg, and they get entirely discouraged. They compare someone else's success story to their own chapter 1. Think about that. Every single wealthy person was once a beginner. Every successful entrepreneur was once confused and unknown. The only difference is they just kept going long enough for their efforts to finally compound. Consistency is the true secret here. Which brings us to, honestly, the most powerful lesson of all. Get ready to let this truth bomb sink in. Money amplifies who you already are. It does not magically change your character. If you are deeply disciplined while you're broke, you're likely going to become even more disciplined and strategic when you have money. But if you're reckless and impulsive while you're broke, getting more money is simply going to create much bigger, much more expensive problems for you. Let's move to and see how this builds into our final understanding of wealth. This right here is why your mindset matters so much more than your actual paycheck. You can have a super high income, but if you pair it with a poor mindset, you will still end up broke. I mean, we see it with lottery winners all the time. But if you have a wealthy mindset, even with a very low income right now, you will eventually build freedom. Because true wealth always begins internally before it ever appears externally in your bank account.
So if you're struggling financially right now, remember what these stories have shown us today. Being broke is temporary. Staying stuck is a choice. Every single millionaire story we covered started right here at step 1, deciding they simply wanted more out of life. They changed how they thought, which immediately changed the direction of their future, and they flat out refused to stay where they were. Your financial future isn't written in stone. It's written in your habits and your willingness to adapt. The road from broke to millionaire is absolutely possible for ordinary people willing to think differently.
The blueprint is there. The stories prove it can be done no matter how far down you're starting from. The only variable left in the entire equation is your own decision. The real question is, will you?